Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Laurie Stern. Join me as I invite experts and friends to discuss a range of topics, from the factual and practical to the mystical and magical. Consider this your virtual happy hour filled with lively, authentic, and meaningful conversations meant to inform, inspire, and ignite your curiosity. Whether you are very real or super woo, this podcast is just for you. Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Laurie Stern, and I'm sitting down today with Jillian Bernstein. Hi, Jillian.
Hi, Laurie. Thanks so much for having me.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad we finally got to make this happen after meeting you and getting excited about what you do. So I just want to set you up a bit. Jillian is CEO and founder of the Wellness Extension, providing concierge HR services to small businesses. What I love about Jillian is she started in HR leadership and organizational strategy. And her career path started in analytical roles before transitioning into human resources. That combination allows her to connect dots between data, well-being, and organizational performance in a way that feels both scientific and soulful, modeling a leadership style rooted in both data and humanity. Jillian's known for creating and implementing award-winning employee wellness programs, enhancing recruitment and onboarding systems, and cultivating a culture grounded in engagement and philanthropy. She has a reputation for being strategic, data-driven, and someone who sees metrics as a way to measure meaning, not just performance. Jillian uses data to understand people, not to define them. In addition, her approach of leadership centers on kindness, family, and balance, and building a family-first culture without guilt. She often says, kindness belongs at work just as much as accountability. And she's proving the two can coexist, that companies can lead with both compassion and clarity. So, Jillian Bernstein, welcome to The Real and the Woo.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. That was lovely and
You're welcome.
really summarized kind of my thoughts and my beliefs so well.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I could provide that for you. I often find I've been lucky enough to be guests on other people's podcasts more recently, and just hearing them introduce me, it's like, oh, wow, they're
Yeah.
talking about me.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, it does feel validating at some
Mhm.
level, right? And when you're putting so much out into the world, you're hoping others are kind of seeing and feeling that too.
So you have your own company. And
Mhm.
how long have you been doing that? And you transitioned from working for others to working for yourself.
So I had known that I always wanted to create something of my own one day. I just didn't know what that would be. And in the world of HR, which I have been for over 20 years at this point, HR and consulting, I decided to leave corporate. And what I did was kind of start small, nights and weekends, connecting, seeing if an HR consulting practice that really focused on the well being of employees with policies, programs, and benefits, if that could be something other small businesses could use. So I started thinking and building out what I thought could be a really great platform for small business owners who couldn't necessarily afford a full time HR person on staff. I also felt in the corporate world, there's sometimes a lens that HR is the principal's office. And I really believe it needs to be personal. I have been in an organization, for instance, where HR was in the back. And I was like, can we move my office to be with the people so we can connect? I don't want people to think you only go to HR for when things are kind of on a downturn, that HR really is there and is present to help support the employees within an organization. So that's what I've done with Wellness Extension. I act as an extension of leadership teams or strapped HR teams to help ensure that they are engaging and cultivating their talent in a really meaningful way, because ultimately at the end of the day, your talent is your most important asset.
I love that. So you said the word connector. and how
Mhm.
you connect. And I wrote this question down for you because you and I are both connectors of dots. It's why I do this podcast. It's one of the joys I have is like if I'm not the teacher for people or the consultant or wellness coach for people, I know other people who may be,
Mhm.
and I'm happy to elevate them and support. It's all about lifting each other up, right? More than ever
100%.
gatekeeping. And I'll just tell everybody my business. So, like I said, you started in analytics. I'm a math person too, so I
Mhm.
love that. So you
Mhm.
started in analytics before moving into HR.
Mhm.
And how has that analytical mindset shaped the way you lead people and created pathways to connect some of these dots?
Right. So I think from my HR history, one of the things that brought me in was the balance of the analytics and the people aspect. Given, as you just mentioned, Laurie, both of us have that kind of connector drive that also kind comes with a high level of empathy. And I have taken kind of my love of data, whether it's employee survey data that I can utilize or whether it's tactically evaluating compensation for a company, and then using what I can from the data to then make the employee experience meaningful. So let me give you an example. One of my clients, I work on compensation benchmarking. We're developing compensation bands for the organization. And that's very analytical. But what are we going to do with that afterwards? Well, we're going to create development plans of how employees can grow their career within the firm. So they not only see remuneration and increased compensation, but they're also taking on new responsibilities and they have a roadmap to keep them engaged. How am I going to learn and get to this next step? Oh, I see the company invests in me, invests in training. So I'm taking something very analytical, evaluating salaries and banding, and then I'm applying it to create meaningful programs and develop those programs and then communicate out what employees need to do to see advancement not only in their professional skill sets but also in their take home salary and what they're earning. So those are ways that I've married the two, in a very concrete HR example. On the well-being side of the house, one of the things I love doing is surveying employees in terms of what do you want? We're spending most of our hours Monday through Friday at the office, and let's make it a meaningful place for us to connect and come together. And for some organizations, that might look like yoga every Friday morning. And for others, it might look like having a nutritionist come in a few times a year to kind of coach and provide some insight on macros and different fad diets, things like that. What should we be doing? And then for others, it's financial well being. So I really try to mix up what we do. So we're holistically approaching everything from the emotional and social to financial to nutrition and physical well-being at the office and making programs that are meaningful for employees to engage in.
Yeah, I love all of that. There's a lot to unpack there. One of the things I wanted to ask you, you touched on surveys, right? So you
Mhm.
sort of shifted the paradigm of what a regular survey would look like. And I believe you call it some sort of, it's like a pulse,
Pulse
right?
check.
So would you like to talk about that?
Yeah. So gone are the days of like 50 question surveys and how do you feel about this? I want to get a pulse and I want to understand we are thinking of offering X or Y. So there are actually plugins you can use in Outlook if you have certain types of programs and widgets that you can put in to get quick responses from employees on an offering that you're putting out and seeing I don't want to start this program if nobody's going to show up. So, putting things out and being like, hey, employees, are you interested in a paint night where we mail supplies to your house and we all grab our favorite beverage and enjoy a fun virtual paint night? No babysitters needed. Or would you prefer kind of happy hour gathering at X or Y place after work? We're planning a social event for Q1. Boom, I'll have information immediately. It takes 2 seconds to get that information out there and it's a pulse. And then afterwards, You can do another post, thumb up, thumb down. What does this look like? Is this something that we want to repeat again? And you
Mm.
basically start using the data that you collect after events and the survey data that you put out there before events to get a pulse on the organization and where they want to go. I have some organizations that are just like, we have to do everything in person, and others that are all remote based and they only come together maybe once or twice a year. So we have to think outside the box, just like many of us did during the pandemic, of how to make sure employees stay connected. And putting out those pulse surveys are quick. They're not big lifts. They're not time sucks for employees. It's not something they wait for later. It's just a quick button. I want this or I want that. And this was great, or I'm rating it not so great. Sometimes there's
Yeah.
even the smiley face scale. So I utilize systems and platforms that my clients either already have, or I can use some of the basic tools within Outlook to do that.
Okay. All right. So, what's the least amount of employees
That's a good
that
question.
you'll help?
So I personally believe any executive who has at least 5 employees needs something to keep them connected. I think by the time you reach 5 employees, it is something where you need to make sure you're starting to build community with your people. But I work with companies typically up to 200 employees. At that point, typically, if you're over 200, you have a pretty robust HR team, typically at least 5 people on your HR team, and you can generally divide and conquer. But I find if you're 200 employees or under, that tends to be where some things are falling by the wayside, or you're just doing the administrative part of HR, which I'm always happy to support.
Hiring, firing, sick days.
Correct. Yes. And yes. And in fact, this morning I had a call with a client about also and
Mhm.
exiting an employee. So I'm always happy to support that. But I do find if you're over 200, you generally have an HR team that is pretty much set. Under 200, what I've been finding is they need that extra little bit of support. And that's where
Okay. So, I have a question then. Like corporations that have more than 200 employees, they're
hmm
huge.
hmm
How can we assume that that HR department is doing all the things that you do? So some of those corporations, in my opinion, maybe they already have, but do you then become a trainer of trainers? So you go into those companies and say, okay, I'm going to train your HR department to work in my model. Yeah.
hmm
Okay.
Yeah, and I really talk about the partnership element in that case, and that kind of also breeds the connector, right? I have these professionals and resources and network that I've built to help make you more successful in this role or what you're trying to do here. And I've seen it be successful with my clients. And this is how you would replicate it if you want to at this larger organization. And so I can come in kind of on the side to help guide, coach, even provide my program materials, things like that to larger organizations. One of my favorite things to do is be an extension of an HR team because sometimes HR professionals don't know where to turn to. They don't know where to go. And so being able to have had all of the experience I did, not only working in corporate, I've worked in government contracting, I've worked in real estate finance on the HR side, private companies, public companies. I've grown with a company from 80 to over 500 employees. I've seen it all, gone public with them. So I know the benefits a larger organization could have from implementing some of these well-being programs, but
And you have the
sometimes,
data to back it up.
yes, but it just sometimes falls by the wayside.
Well,
And
yeah, there's ego in big corporations too, I would imagine, that they're like,
yeah,
we don't need help. We're doing just fine. But their
mhm,
employees, if you surveyed them, they'd be like, well, actually,
right. And that's actually a really good point. The one pitfall or downfall to larger companies is the lack of personalization in HR.
right.
And it becomes a 1-800 number,
Mm.
or it becomes, I have someone I was speaking with, a colleague in the field recently who was saying one organization that's fairly large in the real estate field is essentially like bouncing the individual back and forth. Like no one knows the benefits answer. And if you know how it is when you call
Oh,
customer service, who wants to be pushing all the buttons?
no.
You
I don't
just
even want to do that at the gas. I'm gonna go to the
I
gas station. I'm answering 5 questions before I can even pump my gas. No, I don't want this. No, I don't
no,
want that. Just give me the gas, right?
exactly,
It's the same thing. Yeah. Back to human connection. And
exactly.
yeah, I wanted to touch on that because I know, your mission, my tagline is you matter, among other
Mhm.
things. And your whole bucket is kindness, right?
Yeah.
And so what I love about the kindness belongs at work, and that's just as much about accountability as anything, but specifically the family first mindset that you
Mhm.
model. I wanted you to talk about that because I know there's a personal story that inspired that. And
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you, you know, that's part of your offerings,
Mhm.
but did you get pushback from that more than something else? Like, how did that come about?
Sure. So, my story and part of what inspired me to think differently and be different as an HR professional is shortly after I transitioned. So, my background's in data driven economic consulting, and then I transitioned to HR because of the people piece, because of connection. And about 6 months into my HR career, my boss got sick and left. And so I had to kind of figure out the ropes. But then about a year in, after I figured out the ropes and the CEO of the company was like, you can just run HR. I was like, 6 months in? Okay. But then about a year after that, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And between her diagnosis and her passing away was 6.5 months. So
So
that
sorry.
was really trying. And I felt that there was a lot of pressure for me. And this was not when we had work from home so easily. It was over 15 years ago. And so it really was challenging. And so I had done everything I could to stay on top of what I needed to do and would always, when I went home to visit with her, because she was in a different city than where I was working at the time, I would use the dial up or whatever I needed to do to connect in. And I made it work, but it was stressful. And then after she passed away, the CEO said to me, we had the normal, like, 3-day bereavement leave policy. "Well, when will you be back?" It's not, "How can we help get you back? How can I help ease this transition? I can't imagine what you've been through at 27, losing your mom." Like, it just there wasn't the empathy there, and I was like, "I'm going to look for a new job. This is not okay." And fortunately, we had a really empathetic CFO at the time, so it worked out, and I came back and I promised myself that I would never treat an employee that way who had gone through really a horrific half a year at that point, and then after someone passed away. So things that I've now pushed with my clients and said, like, bereavement leave is something someone never wants to use. You never want to raise your hand and say, "Can I have bereavement leave?"
Mhm.
That's not some fun reason to go out on leave. Many of my clients I'll push for 2 weeks or more for immediate family members. There is so much to do, and people don't need to be kind of tethered to the work life during that time. They really need to take care of their family. There's a lot of logistics that happen. And that's just one example where the 3-day minimum that's typical is not, it's just
It
not
doesn't even
enough.
cover Shiva. I mean,
Exactly.
right. And
It
so,
wouldn't. Yeah,
my dad, same. Like I was 25 when he passed away, and I wouldn't even have thought to ask like what the policy is. I just felt like I got to get back, and
exactly.
I was not ready to go back. I went.
And that's not a family first culture. So, similarly, when was formerly in corporate, and I still do work with past employers, which is cool. Like I've kept up those relationships. I also talk a lot about, and I encourage managers to be vulnerable about what's going on. You don't need to be a full open book, but I do encourage managers to give a little vulnerability about what's going on in their lives so employees know it's okay for them to take time for a mental health day or whatever PTO kind of arrangement the organization has. I'll say to my employees, I'm flexing my day today. I have a therapy appointment in the morning. And I feel like there is only one antidote to making sure mental health is front and center, and that's talking about it and being upfront about it with your people, your employees. And then when my colleagues say, I have a therapy appointment. Is it okay? Of course it is. Like, not a question. I'm modeling the behavior that I think it's really important people take care of their mental health. So these are things that we can do within the workplace. Doesn't cost anything. It just is, and kind of getting back to that, infusing kindness into all that we do. I also have policies that I've worked on with clients where we focus on, when are we emailing our staff? Or can we be mindful that we're only going to email between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. or 7 to
Mm.
7? Because while people don't need to respond and you tell them that, there is often a feeling of being compelled to respond. If my manager's emailing me at 8 p.m., how is it going to look if I don't respond right away? These are not stressors we need to be putting on individuals outside of the workday. So we want to make sure their time within the work hours is meaningful, but we also want to respect some boundaries to allow them to disconnect, rejuvenate, and come back re-energized the next day. Help avoid burnout. And that's also a way to keep your people engaged.
That's amazing. Sorry about your mother,
Mm.
and,
Yeah, I'm sorry
you
about your
know,
dad.
thanks.
So
It's
young.
often we come at our jobs as mothers, as founders too, from knowledge, our wealth of
Mhm.
knowledge, and our personal experience can be and is leveraged. It's a skill set. Life experience matters as much as your college degree. And
Mhm.
so I love how you're really blending, unfortunately and fortunately, life experience teaches us and then it inspires us to make change and pay that forward so that people following us don't have to deal with us. So thank you for, innovating HR. So that's one of the questions I had in terms of beyond the surveys, and you're really doing the pulse check and incorporating wellness. With the recent shifts in the hybrid workplace, how have you seen other ways that HR then needs to shift, morph, reemerge in a different package at
Mhm.
all?
Yeah. So I think communication is key, and HR really needs to be at the forefront of that and also be champions of the hybrid workspace. So if, for instance, it is a 3-2 model where you have to be in the office 3 days a week and home 2 days a week, HR really can champion, let's try and have our one day, like let's give flexibility. This is what I'm seeing more and more of 2 days where people choose, and then one day where we encourage everybody to come in and we do an in-person engaging activity. That's the day of the week that we can do an all company meeting or a team lunch or have a coffee
Like
hour
me.
in the morning or have workout sessions in person. And
Yoga,
let's
wellness.
replicate that
Yeah.
virtually too. Like,
Mm.
if Fridays are going to be our work from home days that we know most people are working from home, that's a great day for us to offer an online yoga class or an online meditation or talk about kind of mindfulness, and people are relaxed in their sweats in their house. Whatever it might be, we need to be, from an HR standpoint, pivoting to support where the employees are, and that is their physical well-being. I think I've seen some policies are coming back. I live in the DC area. A lot of employees are going back into the office 4 to 5 days a week, and it's stressful. So, from another perspective, flexible hours is really critical. Traffic in the DMV, the DC area, is a nightmare, as in I know it is in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure I have to imagine Chicago has
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
bad pockets. So, how can we be flexible too in terms of our schedules? Yes, we're hybrid, but we understand you have daycare pickup, you have, so your child's soccer game at the end of the day, or it's prom, or whatever it might be. How can we be flexible to also allow family members to be in the office for core hours?
Mhm.
What are those core hours? Maybe it is 10 to 3. And then if you're an early bird or you need some flexibility on either side of that 5-hour window, you can come in later, you can go out earlier, depending on that. And I think that is the key. So,
Mm.
hybrid schedule, flexible hours is a really nice way to package to your employees that we care about you having kind of that family first, or and there are people who don't have kids, but we still care about them being able to get their workouts in and still have that balanced boundary life as well. So they'll show up every day in terms of how they're giving back at work and in terms of the energy they're putting into their deliverables that day.
The whole work-life balance. I just spent 4 hours last night going through a mandatory training for a major corporation for which I work,
Mm,
and it's this yearly annual learning thing, and we have to go through sexual harassment training and
mhm,
what are protected populations. And like you've got a picture behind you. Well, if the picture behind you wasn't appropriate or behind me wasn't appropriate, theoretically, I or you could be reported to HR.
I've been there,
Right.
had to deal
And
with it.
so the not so fun part of HR is the employee
Mhm,
dissatisfaction
mhm,
or feeling like their voice isn't heard, or in fact they're being bullied or discriminated against or harassed. And
mhm.
so do you find, like, I know part of your model is like you kind of plug in for a period of time and then you exit, right? So you come in and you help the people that are there. On your own too, like, legally, are you in charge of handling all that as well? Yeah.
So I actually launched a new program called the Small Business Owners Vault that does help with those pain point questions and providing guidance on that on an ongoing basis. So that way there's always a thread to me if you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do in this situation? I have an employee who is feeling bullied or is claiming harassment or is using words like, I feel that I was attacked. I mean, these are like serious allegations in the workplace and you can't dismiss them. I will help guide leadership through all of that, help them with the conversation, help them with the language that we use. If there is any element of legality, I will engage or ask them if they counsel. Otherwise, I have networks of employment attorneys because there are some very specific regulations across varying states
Mhm.
that I would lean on. But that you bring up a really good point, even in the hybrid and virtual environment, we're still seeing things. What I had a call once where someone was wearing something that was very offensive to others on the call. And, you have to be able to have a safe space to bring that up. And I really work with clients as their partner in that. And I don't go away. I mean, basically the model I work with is you can just engage me on an hourly basis, or you can come into one of my programs and have me for extended periods of time, which is great because it gives flexibility to small business owners based on their budget and their bottom line. But I think the challenging conversations, and I have a whole training I do on difficult conversations because I think those are the ones managers and leaders avoid, and then what happens is something balloons up into something bigger, and if you had just had the conversation, even though it might have been a little uncomfortable, then it wouldn't have ballooned up. And one of the best pieces of advice I think I can give managers is when you have to talk to someone about something that's uncomfortable or difficult, or maybe they're feeling a certain way, put on a hat like a coach. Just think like you're coaching a team. You want to ultimately lift your people up and you want to explain, hey, this comment, I'm sure you didn't mean it in a derogatory way or however you did, but it was taken offensively and we need to talk through it because I don't want you or the individual who was impacted to be in the situation again. Can we talk about it? And let's have a conversation. What did you mean? Why did you say this? And I have guidelines on how to do all of this, but basically, it is so important to have a dialogue with our team members, with our employees, and communicate often, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, so you're connecting with each other at the end of the day. And it's not ever a game of telephone or something is totally missed because communication isn't happening. And I think that is a lesson and guidance that I provide to my clients because at the end of the day, they don't want to talk to HR. They just want to be treated kindly and fairly in the workplace when a
Yeah.
situation that's uncomfortable arises.
Well, so 2 things to that. Part of the work that I do is help people understand their internal wiring, their programming, their limiting beliefs, and their triggers. And so, let's say you have a boss of any title, and their employee is bringing them this, I was on a Zoom call and somebody's wearing this offensive shirt, and I really would like you to do something about it. If
Mhm.
that CEO, that boss, he or she also has unfinished work to do with them themselves, then right away they're either not going to believe this employee, get aggravated at the employee, or feel insecure about how to have that conversation, just like you said, or not
Mhm.
even understand the words to say.
Mhm.
And they get uncomfortable with one on one conversations. That's where I come in because I'm like, let me help those people feel good about themselves because hurt people hurt people. And
Mhm.
so even the CEO might have the best of intention to create this welcoming space at work, but they don't have the wherewithal or the understanding of themselves to get over themselves in order to do so. So, my other question then is, have you run into, and maybe you can or can't talk about it, obviously, no
Mhm.
names, but if you've run into employees coming to HR that you're providing and nothing's being done about it at the top,
Mhm.
is it your responsibility then to deal with that top person in a
Mhm.
punitive way? Like, what sort of rights then do you have in your role to
Right.
say, this guy is really screwing the pooch here. He's like, or
Right.
she is not a good person at all, and they need to
Right.
go. So has that ever
Right.
happened?
I mean, I think that becomes a real challenge if it's the CEO or the COO, and I have not fortunately had to deal with anything that egregious,
Yeah.
but there have been moments where I even have been in positions where I haven't been spoken to kindly by a C-suite, and I've either had to build a tough shell about it or had to deal with it on my own and be like, well, this really wasn't appropriate. And typically, in my cases, everybody's had a self-reflective moment and been able to correct the behavior or make a repair.
Well, because
But
that's what you bring, just to be honest. Like,
yeah, I think that's part of my personality too.
mhm.
But HR can be different everywhere. And if there was ever something like harassment or bullying or anything at more of an executive level that needed to be addressed, yes, that's on HR. In addition to conducting an investigation with a third party, like it would be very clear that we would also have to extricate ourselves a little bit because often HR is partnering with executives to figure out things for the organization, like benefits, policies, programs, all of it. So you don't want there to be appearance of any type of bias. So, but it is incumbent upon HR to then utilize an outside organization, whether it's an attorney or their companies that do investigations or attorneys who are very specific that do this to make sure things are assessed in a fair and unbiased manner. And that is the HR professional's job to it, whoever is bringing a claim or has an uncomfortable situation. The HR professional needs to assure the person in that space that this is how we're taking care of it. And almost like it's not up to me at this point. I am so glad you raised this issue. We have delegated this to an unbiased party to make sure that it is addressed in an appropriate manner and they will determine the final findings. The one thing sometimes I find in HR that's rather uncomfortable is if the individual who made the complaint doesn't necessarily find out what the disciplinary action was or how it was resolved. And I know it's uncomfortable to sit with that uncertainty, but there does have to be a level of trust. I mean, this happened recently at my kid's school. A comment was made to my daughter. It was appropriately addressed by the administration. And I didn't ask what the disciplinary action was for the kid. Like, that's not my business. But I was told that a discussion was had and disciplinary action was taken. I'm not an educator. I am putting that in the hands of the professionals to make a recommendation. And my daughter feels safe going to school. So that's what matters. And I want employees to feel safe showing up at work and knowing that their complaint or concern was taken very seriously. So I think at the end of the day, that's the job of an HR professional. And also knowing when it's time to call in for assistance, if there could be any lens of bias.
Oh, awesome. And now it's time for Joy on the Fives.
I love that.
Jillian Bernstein, in this moment, pivoting from something really like dark and terrible, potentially like
Yeah,
HR
I see that.
violations, to now, what is bringing you joy right in this moment
Yeah.
besides this conversation?
Well, yes. So I love getting the chance to chat with you. Um, so can I say two things?
Of
So
course,
I
I've
love
sprung it
this.
on you. Sometimes I give my guests homework, and sometimes I just spring it on my guests. So
I'm going to give you a professional answer and a personal answer. So,
great.
professionally, what's bringing me joy is this new program I launched because I feel like it is going to not only give me an opportunity to connect with so many small business owners, but also what you had alluded to, lifting up other, specifically female small business owners, is one of my personal missions within Wellness Extension. And I'm already excited and partnering with new clients to be able to do that. And I'm really excited what 2026 will bring. I'm a goals oriented person. So that's bringing me joy professionally because I'm seeing the uptick of how not only I will be able to help smaller organizations, but also be able to lift up other women colleagues in my network to bring them into these businesses. So that's the professional one. Personally, I am giving myself a high five because I have two kids in high school right now, and it is a juggle. And I felt like the beginning of the fall was a little just roller coastery for us and getting in a new routine and all of that. But we finally seem to be a little more smooth sailing. Everybody knows the routine now, and so I we finished up some travel. You and the Jewish holidays just wrapped. So I'm feeling a little bit of like, I can enjoy fall and the pumpkins and everything that comes into it. I just love the holiday season. So I'm getting kind of excited for this time of year.
Thank you for sharing that, and
Yeah.
congratulations on allowing yourself to and recognizing that you're allowed to coast, right?
Yeah.
So we get so caught up in the pedaling and the pedaling and the pedaling and
Mhm.
the paddling,
Yeah.
and we're meant to allow ourselves to coast, right? When we're growing a business, however, especially as women, also raising a family and having relationships, it is hard to let that happen. Right? So
Mhm.
again, that's part of what I help people understand is they have every right to find their joy and coast a little bit.
Love
So
it.
congratulations. I wanted to, I think that you noticed when you
Mhm.
said female founders, you kind of dropped your voice a little bit, like it's almost like a dirty little secret. Let's all
Mhm.
understand we help all kinds of humans. The champion I see in you and the voice I'd like you to say louder is that you specifically want to do this more for females. And there really more and more is no apology for that.
Yeah.
Because as women, and I talk about this on my show a lot. I talk about this with clients. We are moving from a male driven model of leadership, ego, the solar plexus, and the astrology we're in the age of Aquarius, which is heart centered
Mhm.
leadership. And so,
Mhm.
again, everybody has internal wiring, everybody has chakras, no matter how you identify or how you were born, but how we lead from head versus heart is where we're going. And
Mhm.
so the more you can stand up loud and proud and say, I really love helping women and not
Mhm.
say, I'd like to help more women, right? Is also modeling how you
Mhm.
walk into those workplaces with your big boots on saying, I'm here to help in HR. We're allowed to have our favorite groups and the groups that we want to support and elevate. And
Yeah.
so thank you for doing
Yeah.
that in the way that you are. And more, I know that you're going to be catching fire with that too,
Yeah.
because I see your stuff and I see all you're doing. I'm
Mhm.
excited about that. And in that way, I think I might have misrepresented what you do because in my mind, I'm like, you and a bunch of people like walk in a door and you're like, we're here for your HR needs, right? And I
Mhm.
might have misrepresented exactly what that looks like. So if I did, and you'd like to redirect the audience to understand when they hire you, they get you, but they also get your team. How does
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah. So when you hire the wellness extension, it's really based on your, as I said, like concierge service. So it's based on your needs and the pain points that you're experiencing at the time. Some people want to push a button with HR, and that's really not us. What we are is partners in helping you tackle your HR program. So I I generally will contract out to various well-being professionals or well-being programming. We at Wellness Extension have a number of what I call well-being challenges that we run directly for organizations. But as I mentioned at the top of the program, if I'm looking for an instructor to come in with a certain area of expertise, like burnout, let's say, I'm going to contract out and work and organize everything soup to nuts for you. But I am not the burnout professional. I can help you create policies and help you on the HR program policy and benefit side, but I would want to bring in a professional to do that. So we partner with a network of other female founded professional businesses to come into your organization to support well-being. On the tactical side of HR, my background is that of an HR generalist, which means I've touched everything from recruiting and onboarding to offboarding and letting employees go and everything in between benefit renewals, performance management, compensation benchmarking, employee engagement, the gamut. I do have colleagues specialized in recruiting who tends to do a lot of the recruiting work because that is a beast upon the majority of the engagements and connection work that I do. I'm generally the forefront of all of that.
Okay. So do you offsite yourself? Like, do you find sometimes that you're working literally in someone else's company for a period of time?
So most of my clients at this point in time are remote or hybrid, and I will go into their offices. Like I have one in the suburbs here in Maryland, and I'll go in if team members go in, just so that way we can connect in person and have some opportunities to collaborate in a different way outside a little Zoom box. But I have clients all over the country, so it really just depends on where they are. I have a client in New York that I'm organizing an entire summit for them, and I'm going into New York and I will be organizing it soup to nuts. So that is an example, but she's bringing in everybody from all over the country. So it just kind of depends. I'm happy to go in, or depending on a lot of my clients are remote. So it works out well this way too.
Well, I don't know when you have time to sleep or coast, but I'm so glad that you do
Nice.
both. I'm envisioning you sort of like, just keeping all these balls in the air, or like you're a hub of a wheel, obviously. I mean, we all are
Yeah.
as moms too, but,
Moms.
you're in charge here and then you fan out everything else, and it's like, do you have a manager that helps you manage where your
That's on
your
the
spokes are going?
That's on the list for I likely will be hiring a virtual assistant in 2026 to help with some of the spokes, and
Yeah,
just making sure as I get busier that the trains are all aligned on the right tracks. But so far, I mean, I have some really great systems in place, work with great coaches, one of whom you and I share, like we're in the same program
yeah,
together to really help guide me on how to make efficient decisions in my business to help it run smoothly.
yeah.
So far that's been amazing. I also have a really great husband who's been kind of picking up a little more of the household stuff so that way I can work those kind of later hours as I need to in the start of a business. I mean, my business is a little over 2 years old, but it's still very junior in this stage of new businesses, and it's exciting to see the growth that's happened since the
Yeah.
inception.
And that's what I was saying too. It's like, because I'm saying like I hung my shingle alone like 2 years ago.
Mhm,
And I'm still working for some other people too, but,
mhm.
the boundary I need to set for myself of not working 24/7. Like you said,
So
like, I get
important.
an email, I don't have to answer at 8 o'clock. I don't
Right.
have to send one at 8 o'clock either.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I don't know if there's, like, an automation for emails, there must be. Like, I can
There
create
is.
all the ones I want and then send it out on a
Yeah,
schedule.
it's the delayed delivery feature. Every provider is a little different, but I think the delayed delivery works. Sometimes Outlook can be funky. Like if Outlook's not open, then sometimes I've noticed my delayed deliveries don't go out. But Google, Gmail has one.
Yeah.
So those are great to use. I
'Cause then it
often
automates. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
often write my emails and then in the morning before I take a kiddo to the bus, I just go send, 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 send. Like
Mhm.
that way I know it's like, but I've really been from a personal perspective, I've been trying to shut down by 9:15, 9:30 at night. So that way I can get some non-electronic time, non-screen time, and then get some time, like, just to decompress before bed.
Right.
So I advise that of everybody because I agree with you, like, juggling all these balls, it can definitely I don't wanna I preach not no burnout, so I can't do
Mhm.
that to myself.
Yeah, it's hard for us to treat ourselves for sure and
It
remind
is.
ourselves of how we help other people. It's like we need to do that for ourselves and turning off your phones and having no screen time. I've been listening to like soothing music at night a little more or just doing like a quick meditation before I get in bed or when I get in
Me
bed.
too.
So, whatever brings you into that state of, okay, I'm taking off my day and I'm going to get into my evening clothes and
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
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 So, is there anything else you'd like to tell my listeners? And of course, how to find you? I'm going to put it all in the show notes, but I'd love to hear in your own words if anything, is
Yeah.
there anything we didn't touch on or you want to just
No.
highlight?
Well, no, I mean, I think if any of your listeners are small business owners and are struggling with any people conflicts or people issues, I want them to know they don't have to struggle. Like, there are people like me out there, and even if I'm not the best solution for what they need, I likely have a network of others that could help. So reach out because you don't need to tackle these things or have sleepless nights because you're just not sure or you're perseverating over a people issue. That's what we're here for in an HR capacity to help. I tell my kids, and this is what I'll leave you with is like, what do you do for a living? And ever since they were little, I help people. Like it's simple like that. I help people. And this is how I do it. So people can connect with me on Instagram at wellness_extension and on LinkedIn, it's Jillian L. Bernstein. So I would love to connect in both places. I post pretty regularly in both places. So I would love to talk and engage with your audience there. Additionally, if anyone in your audience is listening, I am launching the next cohort of my Small Business Owner Spot on November 14th. I'm not sure when this is airing, but if they do want a discount off of the first month, I'm happy to, if they DM me, I'm happy to send them a code for that.
That's great. So, yeah,
Mm,
everybody out there, Jillian has a code for her
mm,
cohort, and I've heard a bit about it on the forum that we share. And
mhm.
I'm excited for the people who get to work with you because you are as kind as you promote others to be, and always with a smile. You've got such a nice, tender, kind energy. I just keep coming back to
Um,
that words. I love, like in yoga, it's called dharma, like you're living your purpose.
yeah,
And I don't know if you like intentionally just started talking about kindness or you just recognized or people echoed to you like, you're so kind. And I just love how that really matches your authentic self is you are yourself everywhere you take yourself. And
yeah,
that's why people really probably enjoy and respect working with you a lot because there's just a lot of depth
mm,
and realness
yeah,
and helpfulness within you. And so thank
yeah.
you for doing
Thank you
everything you're
so
doing
much.
because if you're going to make workplaces happier or kind and just better from head to toe, inside and out. I mean, you go.
Thank you. And I do think if workplaces were kinder and happier places, then that ultimately would emanate into the world, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
we
It's the
people saying,
ripple. Yeah.
no,
Because if you have a crappy day at work, you're going to have a crappy day at home. You're going to be
yeah,
impatient when you're driving home, the whole things.
whole
Yeah,
thing.
the whole thing.
So
So, all right, Jillian,
I
thank you so much for joining us on The Real and the Woo, joining me on The Real and the Woo.
thank you for having me. I
Yeah.
really appreciated the opportunity to connect with you again, Laurie, and just you emanate such great energy too. You're very easy to chat with, and this
Wow.
has been so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.